A year from now, maybe, everybody goes back to what they call normal. I hope we have a new abnormal.
Stand by. I'll be right there.
Hello and welcome to Minter Dialogue, episode number 372. Today is Sunday, the 10th of May, 2020. My name is Minter Dial and I'm your host for this podcast. This week's interview is with Jantsch. John's the founder and president of DuctTape Marketing, a small business marketing consultancy company. He's also the author of 6 books, including the big-time bestsellers DuctTape Marketing and the Referral Engine. His last book is called The Self-Reliant Entrepreneur, 366 Daily Meditations to Feed Your Soul and Grow Your Business, a book that really fits very much into his current environment. In this conversation with John, we discussed the notions of self-reliance, mindfulness and solitude for entrepreneurs and small business leaders, and defining what success really looks like for each of us. You'll find all the show notes on minterdial.com, and as ratings and reviews are the lifeblood of any podcast, please consider going over to this handy all-in-one ratethispodcast.com/MDIAL to drop in your review. And don't forget to subscribe to catch all the future episodes. Now for the interview. John Jantsch, wow, great to have you on my show. I have been, of course, following what you do. I love your style, your books, your podcast, the DuctTape Marketing, and you really do shred a fun and texturally interesting path. That's how I'd like to introduce you. How about you, John? How would you like to say who you are?
Well, I'm just a marketing consultant who's been making it up every day for 30 years. So I observe, I try stuff, and then I write about it. And my view is that marketing is not that difficult. It's actually just human nature. A lot of people screw that up, but a lot of people screw human relationships up too. That. To me, if it's not something that's simple, practical, and is actually in service of the ideal client that you're trying to serve, then you're probably wasting your time. So, if you want to find out really more specific rather than just kind of my lunatic ravings, it's just ducttapemarketing.com. And DuctTape Marketing is actually a system, the name of a system. I've actually put it on everything else now, but it was the name of a system I created because I was frustrated about 25 years ago trying to work with small business owners because that's who I really enjoyed serving. I had a whole mix of clients at that time, but I really loved working with small business owners and found it kind of frustrating because they didn't have the same budgets or attention spans or anything. And so I said, what I need to do is I need to come in and say, here's what I'm going to do. Here's what you're going to do. Here are the results we hope to get. And here's what it costs. Do you want it or not? And to my somewhat surprise, but also delight, the first 3 people I said that sentence to all said yes. And it turns out that I tapped into, I think, what is still today increasingly one of the most difficult things or most frustrating things for small business is it's actually hard to buy marketing services and getting harder because everybody's selling a piece of the puzzle and nobody's talking about strategy. They're all just talking about this new platform or this new tactic. And so that's really what I've built my entire probably life's work on, the idea that marketing is a system. And in addition to books and writing and our own consulting, I've also now got a network of about 150 independent marketing consultants and agencies around the world that install the DuctTape marketing system as well. You
certainly do, and I know many of them. It's remarkable what you say because at some level, the fact that we forget as human beings, and there's this sort of notion of what makes sense and listening to the customer. And sometimes I generally feel that the smaller companies that you're dealing with should be in closer contact with the front line. When you get into the big companies, with whom I deal with, there's so much bureaucratic tape, not duct tape, that it gets, the link with the customer is lost. They may have the budgets, but they are just in a morass of forgetting who the customer is and common sense.
Yeah. Actually, the front end of our engagement is something we call strategy first. And I have as I've said, most of my work has been with the, $1 to $10 million business, for example. But I've actually done strategy first engagements with $1 billion companies, because what you just said, it may be eye opening to talk to a small business owner about strategy, and of course much larger organizations get it. Sure, we know strategy, but they're not doing it. It really is at every level, every size. Right, exactly.
Well, and to this point, so I think the two words that constantly resonate for me that are missing are brand and strategy. And so brand for me is a question of a personality. And when you're a bigger organization where the entrepreneur founder has moved on, where is that voice? Where is that heartbeat? Where is that A minus blood or whatever blood type flowing and coursing? It's not all bloods. There's a specific blood type and a specific thing. And then the second thing is brand. And when it comes to smaller companies, at some level, sometimes it's just like the owner is the brand. But then for the rest, they're like, I don't have time for that. I don't know about that. So strategy and brand, I got time for that later almost.
Yeah. I tell small business owners all the time, because I've been saying the same thing, that small businesses have a brand. Every business has a brand. It's just whether or not you're directing it intentionally, because the essence of a brand is just what the market thinks about you. And so for a lot of small businesses, as you said, who they are being, who the owner of the business, the founder of the business is being, certainly how their employees are being perceived out there in the world. That's their brand, whether it's a positive or negative or good one or bad one, it does exist.
One of the things that I tried to push in the bigger companies was the idea that executives need to have a personal brand participating in the conversation of the overall organization. When you're a smaller company, it's sort of obvious. You are the salesperson, the coffee maker. You're doing whatever you can, and you founded it, so you are it. What's your opinion about, certainly as you scale up into bigger companies, the role of the founder present or the senior executive's role online?
Well, I think increasingly it's become the keeper of the culture, to tell you the truth. I mean, you said specifically online, but I think for the organization, the role they really serve quite often is the one that's setting the tone, that's telling the story, and not necessarily in the day-to-day stuff. Now, a lot of them are also beholden to a board and to financial performance and things. But I think inside the organization and maybe their public presence online, it's probably to be a model of the culture that, not that you want the market to perceive, but that, is true about the business, that is sort of the brand promise, delivered through culture.
In your book, Self-Reliant, the Self-Reliant Entrepreneur, which I tended to think through my prism, which is big companies, you do talk about the ideas of messiness and imperfection. There's a Thoreau quote, which is, "The fault finder will find faults even in paradise. Love your life, poor as it is." In big corporations, we tend to like to polish things and make things look spick and span, get the agency to retouch my face. I don't like the wrinkles. Yet that's what I think customers are looking for. Do you think that is maybe the biggest winning point that small companies can have over big companies?
I absolutely do. There's a lot of talk about this idea of, the hero's journey. And stories in companies, and the customer for a small business is the hero of the story. And I think that small business owners, small businesses in general, have a much better chance of connecting with, we get you, we truly understand your problem. All you have to do is go read, for small businesses, go read their reviews. Assuming they have good, like Google, strong, good, Google 5-star reviews, and you will get a sense of what that business does well from those reviews. And I can almost guarantee you it will say little about the Service, if you're a tree service, it doesn't say they cut my tree down well. It always says they showed up on time and they cleaned up the job site. I mean, it's always about the people. It's always about the experience. And I think small businesses have a real opportunity to deliver, on the promise in a very again, it's not automatic, but I think they have that opportunity in a way that is much closer to the actual customer's story.
In the book, you have these wonderful sayings, and it's clearly a personal journey that you went through. What did you learn when you put the final dot on the final point?
So maybe we ought to explain the book a little bit.
Go for it.
Because that might help with the context. So it is a daily devotional, meaning every single day you wake up and it's May 1st when you and I are recording this, you get May 1st for reading. Then every day starts with some literature that I curated from the mid-19th century. So you mentioned Thoreau and Emerson and Margaret Fuller and Louisa May Alcott. And then you get about 150 to 200 words, maybe contextualizing the reading for today's entrepreneur. And then I leave you every day with a question.
A challenge,
yeah. So it's meant to be a practice. It's not a book you take on vacation and read. It's something that maybe you do in your morning, if you have a morning journaling or meditation or reading practice like so many entrepreneurs do. It's kind of meant to inspire the day for you. And so that was my thinking, and the way that it fit into my practice or why I wrote this book, frankly, because it's vastly different from my first 5 books, is that's something I've done for 20 years. I think entrepreneurship is the greatest self-development program ever created. And, if you intentionally work on yourself, you intentionally get more aware, you intentionally study ideas, witness your thoughts, that's the only way you grow. And so this book is more of a why-to book as opposed to a how-to book. And it really is meant to be something that you spend about 90 seconds every day, and hopefully that something lodges in your brain and you start showing up in a little different way.
And what about you? What was your journey, or at least how did it how did it land for John? I mean, because you write a book, and we both know what that's like, and it's a big process, and
yes.
and you made choices. You made 366 choices to begin with, if you will, or actually there's the whole idea of doing the book, and then break it down into these different ones. May the 1st, by the way, I just checked it out, is Fear the Storm by Louisa May Alcott. Lovely weather so far. I don't know how long it will last, but I'm not afraid of storms, for I'm learning how to sail my ship. That's a lovely one, John. So what about for you? What did John Jantsch come out of this book with?
I think probably, what's interesting is, of course, I wrote this book in the fall of 2018 and spring of 2019. Came out in the fall of 2019. So I wrote it in a pretty condensed, when it comes to book writing, a pretty condensed period, especially given all the research that went into it. And of course, now we find ourselves in a very interesting time. And it was almost, in some ways, it's almost like I wrote this book for what we're going through right now. But for me, what I came out with is some of the things I'm experiencing now. I feel a sense of peace. I probably have redefined my idea of what I'm here to do and who I'm here to serve. I've certainly changed my relationship with success, or what it means, and I'm this is all stuff that I've worked on forever. Quite frankly, but it's stuff that when you take an entire year immersed in this kind of thinking, it certainly cements kind of some things. It's
an amazing thing. I love the fact that you, as you say, you've been working on this for a long time, and I too feel, because I can't remember where it was that you wrote this, but you say, if you're more yourself, you'll be a better leader. And that's actually the bloody subtitle for my new book, John. The title is "You Lead: How Being Yourself Will Make You a Better Leader," and you absolutely say the same thing. And so I think that's what's most relevant today is coming back to who you are, understanding why you're in business and your purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. No question.
So in your book, another thing that I found quite fun and sort of introspective is you talk about this notion of solitude and journaling and mindfulness, which let's say are not let's say that obviously if you know Silicon Valley and certain types, of course, it's obvious, but for so many, it's not really something we talk about.
No.
It's almost like vulnerability. We're always projecting this, I'm perfect, I'm a go-getter. And how do you raise money? How do you talk to your shareholders if you're not doing that? Yeah. But these other things seem to be a little bit more textual. And talk us through how that fits in.
Well, so the idea of mindfulness is, for the entrepreneur, quite frankly, is that, we spend about 90% of our time in mindless.
Mindlessness.
Because we are either doing, 4 things at once, or we're worried about the meeting tomorrow, or we're worried about how it went last time, and it's probably going to go that way again. And I think that, all of that is basically suggesting that we control far more than we actually do. We control very little in our lives. We control probably only 2 things: how we show up and how we respond to everything that happens. And that's about it. And I think that a lot of stress and anxiety is caused by, thinking we can control other things. Now, we can try to influence other things. We can have objectives. But what mindfulness suggests is that you detach from all of the how it's going to happen, how you're going to get there, and focus on, this meeting that you're having, focus on this paper that you're working on right now, because looking back in hindsight, all the stress and fear and agony that I've experienced as an entrepreneur was always worrying about things that I couldn't control. And the thing that you learn over time, you stay at this long enough, is that how often that thing that you wanted to go a certain way, that client that you wanted to get, and you didn't, almost immediately something better happened, or a better path opened up, or you found out that client, was going to be terrible to work with. And I think if you have faith in, that, I think it causes you less stress, worrying about, how everything is supposed to go.
That sounds like finding the silver lining in bad things.
Yeah. And I think that's a way to look at it, but I think it's far deeper than just a quotable T-shirt or something. I think it really is a point of view about the fact that and Emerson was a big proponent of this, that things happen the way they're going to happen, the way they're supposed to happen for a reason. And so you can look at it as the silver lining, but entrepreneurs who stick around long enough are resilient enough to reframe everything that happens, for good or for bad, in a way that is not, I didn't fail, but this test didn't work, and so let's figure out why, or let's figure out what this product launch that didn't go right, was here to teach us. And that's, you can call that sort of silver lining or kind of Pollyanna positive thinking, but it takes that to survive this, that ability to kind of reframe.
I would say it's about taking perspective and knowing how to put things in their place at some level. Yeah.
And I think a lot of times we even take the way people respond to us and react to us personally. And, the challenge with that is we have no idea what went on in their day. Yeah. We have no idea what they're seeing that we're not seeing. And so I think mindfulness also brings with it a heap of empathy, which, certainly is called for today.
It is. And it reminds me of a podcast, what you're saying, it's called Heavyweight. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's this notion that we sometimes bring with us something, a heavy thing, and that filters or is our rose glass through which we see stuff. And if we aren't able to detach ourselves from that, then we lose our ability to take perspective. And so if someone says something to you and you take it badly, maybe it's because of your filter, that it reminds you of your crap father or your horrible uncle or something.
Yeah.
And the other person just had a bad day.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you another thing that I've learned over the years is if I react to something like I've been slighted or somebody said something that I didn't agree with, there's probably a hint of truth in it.
Right.
And that's what caused my reaction, was that I somehow internally knew that actually you're right. That is true about me, but I don't want to believe that story. And I think sometimes I catch myself all the time, thinking, why did that person say that, or something. And then I realize, well, or, you look at somebody else and you go, oh, I can't believe they're doing that silly thing over there. And then you think, well, actually, I do that all the time.
I was just in an event with 4 people in a thing called an empathy circle. And one of the individuals did something that definitely pissed me off. I don't know if I showed it, but someone else stepped in and showed me the way. And so I was like, oh, thank God for that. And why was I getting upset? So I was having that sort of moment of, and I was wondering if I was showing it because you're on screen, you're in public. You mentioned just before, John, about you've redefined success. I would love for you to explain what that is and how it's contributed to your success.
Yeah. So I guess I have to start by saying I think that it's very easy in this day and age. You write a book, people put you on a pedestal for whatever reason. You go on stages, they want to take pictures with you. I mean, it's very easy to get, a ridiculously overinflated ego. And then it gets worse, because then you start comparing yourself to people that are on bigger stages than you. And that
their boat's bigger than mine. Their plane is bigger than mine. What is this?
And it's really easy to fall into that trap, particularly like I said, if you have some little fleeting hint of it. And I don't know, maybe this is another, thing of age. Not everybody gets wiser, but some do. That that stuff just doesn't matter, at all. And to me, kind of my simple definition of success that I think I would apply to anybody has nothing to do with measurement of anything. It's more about a feeling of freedom, that I'm free to choose. If I want to, if I want to live in a big house, I'm free to choose to do that. If I don't want to do that, it really has I don't care what other people think. If I choose to drive, I drive a 10-year-old Mini Cooper that, is got 4 wheels and rolls,
For a big man, that's a very small car. So, John, you and I are of a certain age. Why don't we do that at 40 years ago, and or maybe more pertinently for those who are listening, why would somebody who's 20 start to get on that bandwagon now, and why are they waiting?
Yeah, so there's 2 parts to that question. I think a lot of it is societal, is the environment we grew up, but we all also know the exceptions. I mean, that the kid in high school that everybody used to poke fun at probably was more self-assured than anybody. And I think that the first part of your question, why do we do it, is I just don't think we trust ourselves enough. And that's really the whole idea of self-reliance, in my view. A lot of people look at it as, going it alone and, killing your own food and, not depending on anyone else. And it really is more about actually having such a thorough level of self-trust that you're not impacted by what other people think you should do or say, or, what the common path for everybody your age is. You really are more in tune with what your heart, what your soul says to you. And I think that it just takes a long time for people to actually get deprogrammed into, having the ability to think that way.
So that is maybe how we've got to where we've got to. I think I'm on that same path. And my little sub-narrative is that not because we're at our age that we actually do get it, because there are plenty who don't. Sure. I feel like I've had to go through kind of a life-changing event to really spark me, and mine was 19 years ago. So up until then, I was sort of on my little, wagon and running and da-da-da-da-da. And then all of a sudden, oh my gosh, life is short and I've got to get the shit right. And so what's the persuasion? What kind of argument can you have for a 22-year-old coming out of university? Yeah. Listen, dude. Or do that.
That's a really tough one, because I think if you ask most people that have, very few people go through life and just have it all figured out. Most people have something. I have I wouldn't call it traumatic, but I have something that altered my trajectory for sure, in my career. And I think most people will point to that. It's almost like we have to get pushed into a corner sometimes to actually say, enough. I'm going to do my own thing, and that's the rags to riches stories that everybody likes to tell on the internet. That there is a lot of truth to that. And I think sometimes comfort and complacency and just doing just well enough, stops people from, or certainly allows them to live in a state of mediocrity, deliver so-so results, deliver so-so work, care about people so-so, because, hey, it's not costing me that much, and the idea of going out on a limb, risking everything, in my view, to follow my heart, might be too scary. The reason I chose the literature that I chose from the mid-19th century is that was sort of the first countercultural period in America. We were on the cusp of the Civil War. Women were trying to get the right to vote. We were trying to abolish the legal act of human slavery. And all of a sudden, the writing of that time period was like, wait a minute, maybe we should stop listening to, our forefathers and our preachers and our teachers. And maybe we should start following our own path. I mean, even the fiction from that time period. You mentioned Louisa May Alcott from Little Women, Scarlet Letter, Moby Dick. Those were all stories where the protagonist, it was the first time a protagonist in American literature said, this may cost me everything, but I have to do what I have to do. And I just think that that's tremendous advice for entrepreneurs.
I love that. Of course, I think about storytelling in general and its role as an ability for us to improve our empathy by leaning into the characters that are, you and I obviously didn't live that experience, but by reading great literature, you become the character, the fictional character, and you start thinking about what it feels like to have been a woman subjected or black slave or, that kind of stuff. And then, oh my godfathers, that was a different experience. I wanted to link one thing, John, as we terminate our chat here, is this notion of being yourself and purpose. Are they necessarily linked?
No, I would say they probably are not necessarily linked. I would say they can be linked, but I say the disconnect is that purpose, having a solid grasp on purpose, pushes us to do things we maybe don't want to do, that are inconvenient, that are hard to do.
That may cost me everything.
Whereas being ourself maybe becomes opinion of, I'm going to do what I want to do because I'm just being me. You see right now a lot of people doing Facebook Lives where they're sharing, how we should feel, and they're being authentic. And, to me, that's just an excuse not to actually do some hard work. And I know that, I've done my share of that as well. But I think that's the difference, is that purpose is what drives us to do the hard stuff, the stuff we're afraid to do.
Yeah, the words that come to my mind, John, are messiness and courage. And somehow the messiness thing is like accepting my imperfection, and the courage to do things I fear. Last question for you, John. We're at the end, hopefully, of a COVID lockdown, for now anyway. How do you believe customers are going to change coming out of this?
Well, I think we're going to see, let's face it, some industries are going to get wiped out in the sort of tail of the tsunami. There are going to be certain industries that don't recover. And there also is going to be, I think, certain behaviors that became day to day, even though it's only been 5-6 weeks. For example, the online meeting, the online technology, the online conference, I think is only going to grow because an entire world of new people got introduced to it and said, hey, you know what? For like an initial sales call, this works fine.
Yeah. Who needs to get on an airplane? This actually works. Blue Jeans, Zoom, it works.
Yeah. So things like that, I think certain behaviors, I believe that, and who knows, in 6 months from now, or a year from now, maybe, everybody goes back to what they call normal. I hope we have a new abnormal. I hope that this focuses more attention on the environment and what we were doing to the environment. I hope that this actually helps people sort of slow down and say, this time that I've been spending with my family, taking these walks, not buying as much crap, is actually behavior that I hope sticks around. Now, if I sold crap or I owned a restaurant or I might not believe that, but I hope that this sort of pause actually has a sort of a collective reflection element to it.
For someone who's been helping my wife repaint our kitchen with duct tape, I'm hoping that sticks too. John, how can someone follow you? What's the best thing? And how can they, of course, get your books? Tell us more. Sure.
So you can find pretty much everything I've been doing for the last couple decades at DuctTapeMarketing.com, and that's DuctTape marketing.com. I am on LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter as well, and you can find the books pretty much anywhere you buy books, but I do also have them on the homepage at Duct Tape Marketing as well.
If there were one thing that would make you happy, what would that be, John?
One thing? Just one thing? Who could say one thing? And I guarantee you, Minter, that if I answered this tomorrow, it would probably be something different.
But hey, that's another incantation, another meditation.
Yes. But I'm really I hope we do something about the environment. It's really I really think that we are should be so connected to nature, and yet we're destroying it. So.
Great. Listen, John, I really loved having you on the show. It's lovely to chat with you and get to know you better. I encourage everyone who's listening to go and check out your podcast and your books. Thanks for coming on the show, John.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thanks for having listened to this recording of the Minter Dialogue Show. You'll find the show notes and other blog posts on minterdial.com. If you enjoyed the show, please head over to iTunes to give a rating and review. And to finish, here's a song I wrote with Stephanie Singer, A Convinced Man.
I like the feel of a stranger tucked around me, precipitating the danger to feel free. Trust is the reason, still I won't toe the line. I sit here passively, hope for your respect, anticipating the thrill of your intellect. Maybe I tell myself there's no use in me lying. I'm a convinced man, building an urge. I'm a convinced man, to live and die submerged. A convinced man, in the arms of a woman. I'm a convinced man, challenge my fate. I'm a convinced man, competition's innate. A convinced man, in the arms of a woman. Despise revenges and struggle to see. Live for the challenge so life's not incomplete. What's wrong with challenge? I know soon we all die. I like the feel of a stranger tucked around me, precipitating the danger to feel free. Trust in my reason and let me show you why.